Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. Echoing Melinda, I thank everyone for participating in this great adventure. I will introduce myself. I am Andrea Abrams. I have lived in Danville. Well, I lived in Danville. I just moved this July to Nicholasville, but I lived in Danville for 13 years. I came to Danville to teach at Center College. I teach anthropology, African American studies, gender studies, and the last 3 years I've been the Chief Diversity Officer at Center College. And as an anthropologist, I make my living talking to people and getting them to tell their business, and that's why I'm here tonight. To engage you in a conversation about your experiences and memories and thoughts about Blackness in Danville. So you've been accepted, you've been selected to participate because you represent the younger generations of folks who live in Danville, including some who may not actually be from Danville, and those who are from Danville but live somewhere else right now. We also have some artists here. As you know, they will be listening to the conversation in order to create art based off of your experiences and your ideas and thoughts about Blackness in Danville. So I want to give you a sense of the format for this evening. I will first ask the artists to introduce themselves. I'll remind you of the consent form so everybody is informed about their rights and obligations in this process. Then I'll ask each of the participants to introduce themselves. We'll set some ground rules for discussion and then we'll get into it. Everyone good with that? Thumbs up? All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start with the artists. We'll ask each artist. Brandon, can you remind us who are the artists here? Just to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah, tonight we have Sandra Charles is with us, and we have LaVon Williams with us, are the two artists that are represented tonight.
Okay, and then before we go any further, there are other members of the committee that are here who are helping to put together the Art of Being Black event. One is Brandon Long. I'll let him introduce himself now.
Hi, I'm Brandon Long. I'm the Visual Arts Director at the Art Center of the Bluegrass, and we're really excited about putting together this exhibit, and thank you guys for coming out tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And the other is Amy Frederick.
Hi, I'm a professor of art history at Center College, and I've loved being a part of this advisory committee. So thank you for being here tonight.
Melinda Weathers and J.H. Atkins are also part of the advisory committee. They're in another meeting simultaneously, so I'm going to leave them alone right now. They're pretending that they're not paying attention to this because they're doing another event. So with that said, I'll let the artists introduce themselves, and I'd ask the artists to briefly talk about what art you practice and why you're interested in doing this project. So I'll start with you, Sandra Charles.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to participate. My name is, like I said, Sandra Charles, and I'm an oil painter, but I'm a figurative oil painter. And my work focuses on African-American women and the issues we face being in the American society. Most of my work is large, and like I said, I work by doing different projects. My work not only focuses on how we fit in society, but what we think of ourselves inside and how we become our own individual selves, how we become who we were meant to be. So that's the main focus of my artwork.
Thank you. And then LaVon Williams, if you'll introduce yourself and talk about what art you practice and your interest in this project.
Yeah, I'm an African-American folk artist, and I mainly do wood carvings, and I express African-American life.
Thank you. All right, so I want to remind you all of the consent form here that we, this is, the purpose of this is that you're being asked to participate in a community conversation hosted by the Art Center of the Bluegrass. The purpose of this conversation is to hear your thoughts, memories, and experiences of being Black in Danville. The content of that conversation will be used in the creation of an art exhibit that will be on display at the Art Center of the Bluegrass, both physically and online format from January through March 2021. As a participant in this project, you are asked to take part in this Zoom meeting with the facilitator, myself, and other community members. One or more artists will be in the Zoom. The Zoom meeting is being recorded, and the recording may be shared with artists and the public as part of the exhibit. Both your words and your likeness may be visible to the public. As a participant in this project, there are no foreseeable physical or emotional risks or discomforts to you. If you should at any time feel that your participation would subject you to either physical or emotional risk or discomfort, you are free to remove yourself from this project. There may be no potential benefit to your participating in this project other than a sense of satisfaction that you may have contributed to a better understanding of the Black experience in Danville. There will be no cost to you for participating in this study. Again, your participation is voluntary and you may withdraw at any time. There will be no penalty to you for refusing to participate in any aspect of this project. Your name will be published within the context of the exhibit as a participant in the recorded conversation. Please raise your hand if you understand and agree to participate in this project. Janna, are you raising your hand? Okay, everybody else is raising their hand. Thank you. Kiana, I need you to say yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here are the rules of engagement. I will ask questions. I have a series of questions to ask each of you. But this can be a conversation, so you can and should respond to each other. If somebody says something that reminds you of something or that you want to ask a question about, you are welcome to do that. Please raise your hand though when you're and wait to be called on so we can avoid that whole awkward Zoom talking over each other thing. And I'll do my best to keep track of everything and call on people as I see your hand raised. I may call on people even when your hand is not raised to make sure that everyone gets a chance to participate. So fair warning on that one. This will be limited to about an hour, and we want to give everyone a chance to speak and make sure that we get through all the questions. So in the interest of time, and not as a commentary on the value of what you are saying at all, I may raise this finger as a signal for you to wrap up what you're saying in that moment. Okay? All right, not that what you're saying isn't important, just because of time, I'll do that. Thank you. You are invited and encouraged to be as honest as you can about your own experiences and perspectives, and you're expected to be respectful of each other's experiences and perspective. Shall we begin? Yeah, good. All right,
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm gonna call on you one at a time to introduce yourselves as the participants. If you currently live in Danville, please state your name, how long you have lived here, where you were before, and what you brought, and what if you lived somewhere else before, and what brought you here. If you do not currently live in Danville, when did you last live in Danville? What part of town did you live in, and why did you leave? Make sense? So if you're here, how long have you been here? You lived somewhere else before, where were you and why'd you come? And if you moved away, when did you move away? Why did you move away? And where did you go? All right, so we'll start with Parris.
Hi, my name is Parris Bowman. I'm 22 years old. I have lived in Lexington, Kentucky, and I lived in Danville. My mother lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and my father's always lived in Danville, Kentucky, with my stepmother, Linda Bowman. And so every weekend I would come to stay in Danville on the weekends. In middle school, about 8th grade, I moved to Danville, went to school there, went to Bate, Then I moved back to Lexington my freshman year, went to Bryan Station from my freshman to my junior year. And I ended up moving back to Danville with my dad. And my academics were better when I moved to Danville. So he kept me here and I played basketball, and I've been in Danville ever since. I did go to college in Louisville. I went to University of Louisville. My stepmom, Linda, got sick. So I ended up moving back. I finished my associate's degree at BCTC, and I've been here ever since.
Thank you. All right, Tanisha Austin.
Hello, my name is Tanisha Austin. I am 47.
Stop it.
47. I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia. Just moved back here in March. I grew up in Danville. I haven't lived there consistently for 25 years or so. Come back all the time. My mother and brother still reside in Lexington, as well as extended family and friends. So I come back quite often. I've lived all over. My husband's in the military, so we've moved quite a bit. So I think that's it. I graduated from Danville High School in '93. So went to school my whole childhood. We lived all over Danville. Longview, that neighborhood back there was the last place that that I lived in Danville. So.
Dr. Bryson McGuire.
Thank you. I'm still not used to hearing that doctor in front, sorry. Again, my name is Bryson McGuire. I'm 27 years old. I am fourth generation Danville. I lived on West Jefferson, right down the street from Holland Hawkins on Lisa. We went, I did all my education in Danville, elementary, middle school. High school left in 2011, graduated and went to the University of Louisville. And I currently live in Nashville. I moved here in 2018 after teaching for 2 years at Danville High School in 2016. So yes, currently serve as a Dean of Students here in Metro Nashville Public Schools. And happy to be here with my first cousin.
Thank you. Janna Hill.
Hi. So I grew up in Danville, went to Jenny Rogers Elementary School, graduated from Danville High School in 1994. I grew up primarily on East Walnut Street. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to take these headphones out. I have an echo. Okay, that's better. So I left in 1994. Left in 1994, went to Vanderbilt University. So I went there for undergrad and law school, and then moved here to Atlanta, Georgia, when I graduated from law school in 2001. Really lived in Danville, Nashville, and now Atlanta. And I've been here for 19 years.
Thank you. Mr. Lofton.
Yes. Thank you. First of all, thank you all for the opportunity to have this conversation today. My name is Maurice Lofton. Yes, I am Bryson's first cousin. The last time that I lived in Danville was in 2009. Actually, it was 2005. Excuse me. That was my graduation year. I moved away in 2005. Moved to the University of moved to attend the University of Louisville in Louisville. Then moved to Lexington for law school, and then moved back to Louisville. Then actually moved to Virginia to practice in Virginia, moved back to Kentucky, and now I'm currently practicing in Washington, D.C. My law firm is located in Washington, D.C., but I reside actually in Maryland. So I've been all over the place. Let's see. Obviously, the reason why I moved was for school and for work. And that's pretty much it. When I was living in Danville, I grew up on East Main Street and also West Walnut Street as well.
Thank you. Holland Hawkins, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Holland Hawkins. I grew up in Danville. Both of my parents are from Danville. I grew up on Lisa Avenue, so it's like near the Taco Bell, and my parents still live on that same street. I left Danville in 2006 when I graduated high school, and I went to the University of Louisville, and then I moved to Chicago to go to law school. And then after I lived in Chicago, I moved to Nebraska for like 10 months for my job. And then I moved to Florida for 3 years. And I just moved back to Kentucky last year. And I live in Louisville. My law firm's here in Louisville. And yeah, so kind of been all around too.
Thank you. Latoya. Latoya, please.
Sorry, I had a call and I was just, it just popped up. I am Latoya Payne. I'm 40 years old. I was born and raised in Danville, Kentucky. I went to Oswick Elementary, Middle School, and Danville High School, graduated in 1990. I last lived in Danville in 2010. I moved away after graduate school and after working for a little while. And I grew up on North Street. There's North Street, Upper Street, South Street. I grew up on North Street off of 2nd Street. We moved, I think, when I was in middle school to Cloverdale Drive. So I finished out the rest of my years at Cloverdale. And then I went to Center College.
Yay!
All the way to Center.
Courtney. Can't hear you, Courtney. No, not yet. So while you work on that, we'll go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yay.
Okay. Sorry, technical issues over here. So I went to the University of Louisville. So I lived in Danville. I was raised in Danville and lived there until 2005. So I moved away for school. I stayed in Kentucky until 2016. I now live in Atlanta, so I've been here for 4 years. When living in Danville, lived in several different areas. So I spent lots of time with my grandparents who lived on 2nd Street, as well as growing up in the Parkview apartment complex and the Candlewood subdivision, as well as now my parents are in Indian Hills.
Thank you. Janna Hill. We can't hear you, Janna.
Now, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I'm trying to think. My sister pretty much covered everything that would apply to me as well. But 44 years old, graduated from Danville High School in 1994. So I spent all my formative years in Danville. Moved away, I guess, to go to college. So I came back in the summers, worked there in the summers until law school. After law school in Nashville, we moved to Atlanta and have been here for the past 19 years.
All right. Thank you. Holland, did we do you? Okay. And then Kiana, I think you're the. Kiana, you ready?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Kiana Brewster and I'm 42 years old. I have been in Danville for 3 years now, going on 4 years, well, starting my 4th year. And I came here to accept a teaching position at Center College in the Sociology and Anthropology department. So I've been teaching at Center for 3 years now. I'm originally from Philadelphia. I did my college undergrad in North Carolina. I lived in Connecticut for grad school and Illinois as well. And then I came down here. And then I moved to Kentucky after living in Chicago for about 11 years.
Thank you, Kiana. And I think Hallie? Hallie, are you there? Hallie? We can't hear you, Hallie. Are you there? All right, well, Hallie is figuring out the technical difficulties. We have another artist who has shown up. Kiptu Taurus, would you like to introduce yourself, what kind of art you do, and why you're participating in this project?
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Hello. What kind of art do you do?
Yes, my name is Kipto Tarus, and I'm a sculptor in Lexington from Nairobi.
Thank you.
Do a lot of. Can you hear me?
You're kind of breaking up a little bit. All right. Well, thank you. Hallie, are you here? Are you here now? All right. So hope Hallie, whenever you get in, let us know when you're here, okay? So let's start this. So I think from my count, most of you are actually expats. You're not actually living in Danville right now. And the ones that are here are Kiana, Holland, and Parris. Do I have that right? Yeah? Okay.
I live in Louisville, Kentucky.
And okay, you live in I'm gonna count you, Holland, because you're kind of close, but
okay.
But you're in Kentucky. There are a lot of Atlanta folk here. I lived in Atlanta for a while. And, yeah, I have a sister there, the same name, a similar name. So let's get started. I'm gonna start with those who moved from Danville. And I'm gonna ask you to talk about, it's a big question and you can approach it any way that you feel comfortable doing it, okay? How has being Black in your new home, be that Atlanta, DC, Nashville, Louisville, how does that compare to being Black in Danville? What are some good and bad memories of Danville? Let's start there. And would you consider moving back to Danville? Raise your hand if you'd like to jump in with that one.
I can jump in to answer that. I live in Frankfurt, so are you comparing those as the same as being in Danville because I'm
No,
in Kentucky?
you tell me.
Right, and it's similar. It really is, especially to the second home that I grew up in on Cloverdale, because the neighborhood is mixed, both in ages and race. But growing up on North Street, it was all Black. That whole neighborhood was all Black, and everyone knew each other and it was all families. So that was different. That part is different. But as far as being in Frankfurt, it's very much the same.
Courtney.
So I'll start with your question, would I move back to Danville? I would move back, but there are conditions. I would need to be married and have a family just because the dating scene in Danville is non-existent. For me, I think the difference for me being in Atlanta, like the last neighborhood that I grew up in Danville, was not mixed race. So what's different for me here is the fact that it is mixed race. My experience in Danville too, from a faith perspective, was different because I was raised Catholic, and so I went to St. Peter and Paul. So the majority of my faith in growing with God and that relationship is, I have shared that with mostly white parishioners. Here in Atlanta, I go to a predominantly Black Catholic church, so that experience is different. What I did like about Danville versus being in a larger city, of course, is you feel like you know everybody. That camaraderie is very different than being in a larger city where I know people, but we're so sprawled out, and I just don't feel like I know enough people.
Thank you. Others on the experience of how being where you are now compares to being Black in Danville, and if you'd move back?
I'll jump in. I would not move back. I can't see myself there after living in, bigger cities here in the past 10 or 15 years. When I think of Danville growing up, we didn't have a lot of Black culture or cultural experiences. And I get that in Atlanta. I just moved from DC, so I got that in DC, so I didn't experience that growing up. And I mean, I'm not sure if you can equate that now, even now. I do like being from a small town, and it took me moving away to appreciate it. I taught school in DC, and these kids go to school with somebody new every single year. Whereas me growing up in Danville, I went with kindergarten through high school with some of the same people. And then there's like that 6 degrees of separation. My grandmother lived on North Street, cousins with Lonnie. So it's just like, it's a small town feel that I appreciate now, but I didn't appreciate growing up.
How about Janna or Alana? What about you, either one of you?
As far as moving back to Danville, I'm kind of like Tanisha. After being away for 19 years and living in bigger cities, I just can't see it happening. Although when I do get to go to Danville, because my family is still there, I enjoy the experience so much. It's so like peaceful and tranquil, and sometimes I need that to kind of like, I guess, decompress. And so I always wish I could stay longer, but as far as having a desire to live there full-time. Not unless I had to go to like assist a family member or something. I don't see it happening.
Okay. Dr. McGuire, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm grateful for the small town upbringing, and certainly, as it's been echoed, I appreciate Danville for giving me that village. You know, certainly that old saying, "It takes a village to raise a child," is something that I really hold on to. It was nothing for us to have about 15 aunts, 10 uncles, you know, 45 grandmothers, you know, and I appreciate that. For me, however, I think now I'm being exposed to a bigger city. I like the city life. However, I love to be able to have the opportunity to, what I say, take Danville with me. Just because I moved out of Danville does not mean I still don't carry those values and morals and teachings that we were taught growing up being from a small town. Again, I'm grateful for that village that we had and the wonderful support system that I still have in Danville. I think that I just like the more opportunities. And I think the initial question was, you know, the Black experience, or how does that differ from here? I also had the opportunity, as prior stated, to teach within the school system to which I had been reared in, where I was the only core, you know, Black African-American that taught a core content area in the district, compared to coming to Nashville, where there are several African-Americans teaching. My executive principal's Black, my superintendent's Black, you know, our executive directors are Black, you know, so being able to see more of myself and those to which I work with, and those I can also call equal peers, makes a difference for me, both professionally and personally. So if we have that minority teacher recruitment back up in Danville, and then they're in need of a superintendent or a principal, if Dr. Weathers has not already took that position, I would love to come back and take that position. But other than that, I think that right now I'm grateful for where I'm at and what Danville has taught me to where I can be where I am today.
Okay, thank you. So part of what I'm hearing is that for those of you who've moved away, most of you would not consider coming back because you have where you are, there are more Black people. You have, there's more Black culture and more Black spaces in which to be. But I'm gonna ask you to reflect back for a little bit to when you were in Danville, and what are some of can you think of a memory or an event or a person or something about the Black part of Danville, or being Black in Danville, that's a good and meaningful memory to you, something that you really do miss? Some of you talked about you know, having cousins and in the small town experience, but is there something else, something other event or space or memory of being Black in Danville that you hold dear?
There's one memory that keeps coming to mind, and I'm sure Maricas will also share this memory. When we were younger, there used to be a lot of Black people on Sunday nights at Batewood, down at the Batewood Projects, and they would be playing, you know, a basketball and down there, like in the playground area where we all socialized. And I'm also thinking about 6th Street Baseball Park and Jackson Park, where it seemed that there were a lot of recreation. My grandfather ran the concession stand at both 6th Street, Jackson, those areas. So there were a lot of Black, that was a Black experience I'm thinking of right now. And it seemed to be several of Blacks that would congregate during those times, when softball, basketball, those things would be, as the young folks say, popping. So I think that was one thing that I'm thinking of right now.
Courtney.
What comes to mind for me too is, I can't remember if it was in February, but at Danville High School, they used to host like an African American or African history day, and it would be a weekend day. And so I liked it because I would always get to see my friends, and they would have vendors, and you know, you could learn a little bit about the culture. A popular thing that began to happen, I believe, was like a fashion show. So it was definitely an event that I would be excited to go to each year.
Thank you. Toya.
One of the great memories I have is my family who lived in Danville with the Marshalls, and they always had a beauty shop on 2nd Street. and it was the hub of 2nd Street, and you could go in there and, you know, there's, at first my uncle John Marshall had this shop, and he was a barber, and, you know, all kinds of people would come in there, and even the people who sold products would come through from different cities. So that, and then my Aunt Rose took it over and it became a beauty shop, and just the stories and the history and just layers upon layers of generations of people who would come in there and share their stories. And actually my aunt was the one who would run the fashion show for the African American celebration or weekend that I believe Courtney was talking about. And so that readily popped to mind. That 2nd Street corridor was really important in the Black community.
Thank you. Maricas? Maricas. Am I saying that right?
You had it right the first time, Maricas.
Okay.
One thing that I can remember is the church in the Danville area. I remember growing up and going to church with my grandmother all the time. And growing up, I sung at a lot of churches around Danville with my cousin. His name is Brent Faulkner, which I'm sure everyone probably knows, who plays the piano. And churches would invite Brent and I to different events, different programs that they would have. And I can remember even, you know, Mr. Atkins organizing the march every year that was held at First Baptist Church. So a lot of the great memories that I have are singing at churches, attending church events with my grandmother. And that was really an escape for me after, you know, being in school all weekend, being involved in all of my extracurricular activities. Just being at church on a Sunday with my grandmother was just something I still value to this day.
Thank you. So now I'd like to shift a little bit to those who currently live in or close to Danville. Who is your community? And what difference does it make to have or to not have kinfolk or a partner in Danville? Or where you are now in Kentucky? Kiana, I'm gonna pick on you to answer that one first.
Okay, so you would like for me to answer that question, you said?
I would.
Who is my community? I don't really have a community in Danville. I'm still building one, and I've been building one for about 3 years now. So I don't really consider myself to have a community outside of the people that I work with, like my job. And that's pretty much it. Some of the ways I've explored Danville include, you know, to work on building community. I've visited some churches in the area. And, you know, a lot of times when I move to a new city, I'll check out the churches because that's a really great way to build community. I do think some of the churches in Danville are on the conservative side in terms of their beliefs and practices and just the way they think about things. So like coming from a city in Chicago, even the churches, like there was a lot more variety and places where I could go where they would be pretty, I guess, affirming and welcoming. You know, I went for a little while to Lexington to a church that I thought was affirming for LGBTQ people, for that community. But it's like, I don't really feel like making that drive every weekend, so I just don't go anywhere now. And I don't go anywhere. But I did go to some churches. I went to what is that called? The West Hill Community Theater. I enrolled in an adult theater camp over the summer. I got all these side roles, you know what I'm saying? Not the center roles. I got all these like supporting roles in the play or whatever, and the plays really, to me, weren't really culturally sensitive either. Like the plays that we did, like the different selections of the songs, and like we did a big thing about boys bands. It didn't even include the Jackson 5. I mean, come on, like you're gonna tell me you're not even gonna include the Jackson 5 in a thing about boy bands? Like, okay. So I did those things, and I don't know if like I find myself initiating things a lot with people. I'm always like an initiator, like instead of people initiating things with me, like just small chat and conversations. So it's a lot of work, like it's labor intensive to build community, I think, around here. I took a class at the Art Center. I do reach out to my colleagues. I've invited people over my place for dinner and out to drink. So I go walking every week with colleagues. Like on the weekends, I have 2 colleagues that I go walking with every weekend. Cheryl was kind of nice. Cheryl invited me to lunch one day, which was kind of nice. I guess I don't want to take all the time, so I guess that's all I'll say. I'll just say it's a work in progress. I'm still working on it. I think like Courtney Gibbons said, like this place is really not conducive to dating. So not going to find somebody in Danville pretty much. And I came here by myself. So you did ask a question about family, Andrea, and my family is mostly in Pennsylvania. So Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, that area. And they come down here to visit every now and then. They were here for Labor Day, but for the most part, it's pretty difficult being really far from family. I miss a lot of like birthdays and, family events that I can't easily make it to. So it's just a sacrifice that I consider as part of my professional trajectory, like what I need to do in order to establish myself professionally. And I think that just requires being mobile and moving around to wherever a door opens or opportunity presents itself. And that's kind of how I've lived my life, like going where the opportunity presents itself. And there was an opportunity here, so I came. And it's not all bad. Like I said a lot of bad stuff, but like after being in a big city, it's nice to be in, to not hear conversations outside of my bedroom window, like to not hear people walking by on the street and have to plan to make time for the traffic to get wherever I'm going or to fight for a parking spot. Like I wake up and I hear birds chirping, and that's pretty nice. So there are some things that I appreciate about living in a small town. And I'm not from a big city. I've lived in small towns before, which is I think also why I was open to coming to Danville, because I've been in predominantly white spaces before, and I'm used to moving through those spaces. So I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew what I was going to find when I came to Danville. I wasn't confused like about what I signed up for, and I understood that I'm going to a very conservative state, a very conservative town, a very white town.
Okay. Thank you, Janna. So I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit, because part of why we're having the art of being Black is that it was when Nikki Kincaid and the others at the Bluegrass Art Center thought of this, they wanted to respond to what was going on in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and the way in which not only race, but racism are impacting the lives of people in Danville. So for those of you who currently live in Danville, and for those of you who lived in Danville, so this next part of the discussion is open to everyone, but I'm asking you to reflect upon it in terms of Danville. So your memories of Danville, or when you come back home to visit Danville, or what you hear from your kinfolk and your friends about Danville, all right? I want you to think about what do race, not even just think about it, I would like you to talk about what do race and racism look like in Danville? When do you see it? When do you feel it? Where and when have you felt the most unwelcome or unsafe in Danville? Or you've heard about that? What impacts of things like Obama being president, then Trump being president, then the Black Lives Matters movement had on Danville and race relations? Big question, so there's lots of places for you to jump in on that one. Everyone's looking very thoughtful. And I'm gonna call on Parris for her thoughts on this.
I was trying to think, probably the most recent that I could think of where I kind of felt like it was more so a race issue that I've had personally. As a lot of you guys may know, Cheryl Burton is running for city commissioner, and we've been doing a lot of protesting. Danville has been doing protesting within the last couple of months, and we had a situation where we were standing on the corner. I'm not sure if Miss Cheryl was here or there for it, and a lot of the community was there, and there were some racial slurs being given to a lot of the people that were protesting, standing on the corner. I mean, I've been in Danville my whole life, and I've never heard as many racial slurs because we were protesting for something that we believed in. That would probably be the main thing. I've never went to a store and felt like I've been racially profiled. I'm actually African American. A lot of people think that I'm mixed or biracial, but I'm just very fair skinned. But I've never went anywhere and just felt like I was being racially profiled. I grew up in a Black church, so I've always been in a welcoming setting. But that has probably been the most prominent thing that has stuck out to me, was standing at the Constitution Square and having racial slurs thrown at me. Other than that, I can't really think of any other. I mean, the school system, I've noticed some of that with the tension with Titletown. That could probably be the only other thing that I could think of between Bull County and Danville. I used to play for Danville my freshman year. Totally different playing at Danville than in Lexington schools. And I remember we've had problems with the other girls, and I'm sure other team from football, baseball, that they've probably, experienced the same thing as far as race issues there.
Thank you. Lana, how about you?
She actually has a work call that
okay.
we have taped, so
Okay.
had to step out of the room for a minute.
Right. Tanisha, how about you?
I would say growing up, I guess I just stayed in my own little bubble. I really can't think of any, instances directed towards me going to Danville High School or anything like that, not that I can recall. Other schools in the area, yes, the county schools, because back when I was in high school, there might have been one Black person at Bull County, the whole school. So things are different now, but but I just, like I said, I was just in my own, I hung with the same people, did things like Dr. McGuire was saying, Batewood Homes, that's all Black people, Jackson Park, hanging out at John Eddie's on 2nd Street. It's just, it wasn't a mixed crowd for me personally. So I can't speak to any incidents, growing up.
Thank you. Dr. McGuire, any thoughts?
I think one of your questions was, where was a time that I felt unsafe? Thinking back, I don't think I've ever felt unsafe in Danville. And that may have just been because of my community. I have 3 older cousins ahead of me, so most likely because we all matriculated through the same schools. If they didn't know somebody, I knew somebody, and I felt like I was well protected. At the time, before the younger cousin right under me came up, I was, I guess, between me and the next. So I was well protected by my family, by my parents, by the support systems, as Merkel said, by our church communities, to which we were affiliated and a part of. I think that the first time I understood or I realized that I was Black was when I had begun dating in middle school. And it was a white young girl that I had started dating. And she came back to school 2 weeks after we had been dating, you know, in the 6th grade, because we know what that means. And she came back after 2 weeks and had said that her mother said that she could not date me because I was Black. And I went home and I told my mother that. And for those that know my mother, it knows that didn't go too well for that young lady's mother. And so it was a very interesting experience. But at that point, I think that's when I realized that I was Black and that there was a difference to which we had to interact, or seemingly we had to interact. And I always remember that experience as a means to reflect back on. Other than that, I haven't experienced any inherent racism, as Parris had stated. I definitely believe that I've experienced microaggressions, such as you're very well spoken. I've heard that very well. You know, I'm sure other people have heard that, but I've certainly experienced microaggressions in Danville, but nothing to the extent of being called outright out of my name.
Thank you. Courtney, I keep seeing you nod your head. Do you have anything you wanted to say?
Well, for me, a lot of what I hear about Danville currently is from family. And so, you know, my mom has shared with me an experience she had. She likes to walk to get exercise, so walking, you know, throughout Danville, whether downtown or other areas. And she has had the N-word yelled at her while walking. Now, I think what is more prevalent when we think about racism is we can see it on social media. So a lot of what I see in regards to if it's a microaggression or if it's kind of like a little more overt or covert racism, it's through the posts of what people are, you know, have on their timelines on social media. For me, I've never felt unsafe. I have felt uncomfortable. So it was right when Cattleman's opened. My mom and I went because we like the salad bar, and we walked in and it was just all white people. And when we walked in, all eyes were on us. It just kind of felt like a different time period. And I'm just like, I don't know this kind of Danville. And it's like there were no familiar faces. So that was an interesting instance. And then I've always known I was Black just because, you know, I grew up in a predominantly white church. A lot of my extracurriculars were with white people, and I still don't know a lot of the people in the Black community in Danville. So I've always been very aware of being Black and being different. When I was in high school, I worked at Burke's Bakery. And when I went to college, I went to U of L. When I came home, that was my last summer working there. So we did, a friend that I went to high school with, we both worked there together, and we worked alongside an older white female. When I left and went back to school, I was told that she referred to us as lazy N-words. So my mother found out, and she went right on up to Burke's Bakery and talked with the owner, and that woman was terminated. So that has been my only experience, but it wasn't directed to my face. So
Yeah.
If I could add something as well. So in particular, 2 instances. The first time that I felt unwelcome was actually in the classroom. I tended to take advanced placement classes in high school, and I generally was always the only Black person in those classes. And I remember each summer I would have to read a certain number of books, take a certain number of tests in order to get into the class. And my mom would always ask me, you know, why are you killing yourself every summer to get into these classes? And it really wasn't because I enjoyed the coursework. I didn't. But it was because I needed to prove that I belonged there and that someone of color belonged there as well. So of course, in those classes, it tended to have students who came from more affluent families. And in particular, I remember a student who was white, and I won't say who she is or who her parents are, but she stated to me, you'll never make more money than me. And another instance, another white student stated, well, didn't your grandmother used to clean my grandparents' home? In front of all of my classmates. And so those are two instances. And the last instance was a very overt act. I was speaking to my mom and my grandmother about this on the day that George Floyd was murdered, which kind of sparked those feelings again. I remember, like I said, growing up on West Walnut Street, I walked to the corner store, which is by Gethsemane Baptist Church, that is across from the Viaduct, which is right down the street from Center College. And I was walking really just to get a pop, which is what we call it in Danville, or soda. And 3 white gentlemen pulled up beside me in a pickup truck, 2 in the back, 1 in the front, and yelled a nigger. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. And I remember walking home crying, explaining to my mom what had happened. And so, yes, those things do happen in Danville. So those are some instances that kind of I've carried with me kind of over the years.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
To add to the conversation, I actually remember when I found out that I was living in Danville. So I grew up in a mixed neighborhood, but mostly I knew everybody in the neighborhood. And so when I was like 6 or 7, I seen this little white girl. She was playing in a yard like 2 houses down from mine. And I asked my mom if I could go play with her. She was playing with her dolls. And my dad was in the front yard, so my mom said I could go down to this house. And so me and the little girl was playing, and her grandmother comes outside and calls her over. And so the little girl goes over there, and then she comes back to me and she says, I can't play with you because you're Black, and you have to go home right now. And so I remember getting up from this yard and walking home, and I was too young to even know what race was. I didn't even know I was Black, because I went to, at the time I was going to a school where I was like the only Black person. And so, like, I guess growing up in Danville, and as I started to learn about race and racism, I realized how like traumatic that situation was for me, being like a little girl playing with dolls and being told I wasn't good enough. So after that, like racism always built off that one experience for me living in Danville. So
Sorry that happened to you, but thank you for sharing that with us. So I'm gonna shift us a little bit from these painful and problematic memories and experiences to thinking about dreaming about what Black Danville could be. I've lived here 13 years, and I have, often have people ask me where the Black people are, and I'm like, I don't know. And I hear about these Black neighborhoods that have been, and the history of Second Street and other places that people used to hang out. And then I hear about, things that, I wonder, like, where, what would it take for there to be this sense of Black culture that especially the expats are talking about, the people that have moved away are talking about, that sense of having those places that you go to where you feel a really strong sense of Black kinship and community and culture, where you feel that Black Danville can, what do you think it's needed? Let me put it this way. What do you think is needed so that Black people can come together and celebrate their identities, their cultures, their history, their potential, their Blackness in Danville? If money were no limit, money is no limit, what would you like to see happen in and for the Black community of Danville? What does an empowered and fully realized Black Danville look like to you? No hold barred, no holds barred.
I would like to see more Black businesses in Danville. I think one of the things that I really strive to do in the cities that I've lived in is to support Black business. If I'm a Black person supporting Black business in other Black people are supporting Black business. It's like you meet and you know, you talk to each other and you laugh and you build that kind of sense of community where there may not, you know, in a loose sense of the word. But I don't see that in Danville, other than barbershops and a few, you know, smaller sort of businesses. I don't see like that Black business hold in Danville, considering that there are Black people there. You know what I'm saying? So I would like to see more Black businesses.
Kiana?
So I remember when I first came here, sorry, I think, I can't remember who, I think I just went by myself, but I went to that African American on 2nd Street Festival. Do you all know which one I'm talking about? The annual, I don't really remember the name, but it's every year. And I think if there were more events like that, that would contribute to building community. That was pretty nice.
Yes, Parris?
I would like to see more Black teachers in our school system, or more Black leadership in our school systems, because when I was going to Danville, I'm pretty sure it was only two. I only had 2 Black teachers, and I'm younger than Dr. Bryson, but I have nieces and nephews that had him as a teacher, and they said that he was the best teacher they ever had. I never had a African American teacher in my life. So I know that was something that would have me starstruck, because it had them starstruck, to have an African American teacher who was a male, that left an impact on them so large. That's something that you can't replace. So that would be something that I would want to see in my community, just because I've never had that myself. So to see people after me, young adults, children after me have that, would be something that would be great.
Parris actually took mine. I was going to say something similar. I really feel that our students of Danville need to see Black teachers and Black leadership. I cannot explain. I don't think the first Black teacher I had was a professor at the University of Louisville after I left Danville High School. And I think that it's very, very important for our students to have representation, you know, and I mean, people of color, period, you know. There should not, you know, again, I was the only male Black teacher, the top core content area. You know, there are several Black individuals who are on support staff, but we need more certified educators in our school system for our students to be able to have that representation, to know that it is possible. You know, when you're in Danville, a lot of us, as already stated, have moved outside and have found other opportunities. And while we're in opportunities, and we found these opportunities, we found other people who look like us. But the students who are in Danville don't have the representation to say, hey, it can be done. You know, there are some Black teachers. I think that there was a Black guidance counselor there presently, and I'm not sure if she's still there, but these students need to see representation within the school system, leadership, teachers, to let them know, hey, that there is life after, or you can be able to achieve. And not saying that you cannot achieve while you're in Danville, because there's many people who have done that and have done beautifully in Danville who are Black, but to see that you can reach these occupations, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher, you can be a, you know, entrepreneur, whatever that may be, a social worker, to ensure that that their dreams and what they desire comes to pass. But I think that that's a good step to start at, to having representation in the school system.
Thank you. Other dreams, it can be anything.
I agree with what Bryson just said. I think my ideal Danville does involve like a bigger Black, a class of Black professionals. Just on this phone call alone, I think at least 4 of us have gone to law school and graduated from law school. and have our, law degrees and are members of the bar, but none of us are, in our home community. So I am actually one of those people who probably could never see myself coming back permanently to live full time in Danville. But I also have some regrets about that. I have some guilt about that, because I do think that we would have a lot to offer, our hometown. But I think, if there were other Black professionals, because that's not something I saw a lot of, I think there was limited opportunity growing up, and you saw, some teachers and some principals and some people involved in like city government, but you just didn't see, as far as I'm aware, I don't remember seeing a Black doctor or a dentist or lawyers. I knew people who had gone to law school, but I didn't know anyone who actually practiced law in the community. So I think ideally, I know there are some now who are practicing, but it'd be great if, even if there was like a Black law firm where you have multiple attorneys who are, able to service the community, or you do have Black medical practices, or Black, a Black-owned dental office, that kind of thing. So to me, that's a part of, kids being able to see themselves in these professional roles and seeing opportunities, but not that it has to be opportunities outside of the community, but that realizing that you can be successful in your own community if that's what you want to do. So,
thank you. How about you, Mr. Lofton? What's your dream of Black Danville?
Yeah, so I actually agree with Lana on that. That's actually what I was going to say as well. If there was a network of professional Black people that younger Black people could kind of see themselves in or model themselves after. I know in Danville, particularly with young Black men, that a lot of times their aspiration is, being on the football team, playing for the Abrams. But a lot of times they don't see that there, is life after that, and you can be, great in something else other than sports. There's law, there's medicine. And I recall even in high school and in law school, thinking about Lana and Janna, knowing, because, obviously with Danville being so small, when you're someone who is interested in a certain field, of course, you think about people who have already, kind of progressed in those fields. And so I remember, oh, I know that Lana and Janna, did it, so I know that I can do it. And so, those are the examples that are needed in Danville. And a lot of times if kids don't have the support from their family, thankfully I did. I had a supportive family, very supportive family. But for those kids who do not have a supportive family, they need examples. They need role models who can, give them the guidance and the direction that they need to get to where they need to be. What I found even in my profession is that a lot of times my colleagues, white colleagues, their fathers are lawyers. Their grandparents, grandfather, is a lawyer. But being Black, we really don't get those examples that we need that can, show us what we need to do to get to where, to achieve the dreams that we have.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll share. I share the same sentiments. I think if money was not a factor, it would give these organizations large recruiting budgets. I'm in HR, so I'm thinking from an HR lens, but large recruiting budgets where they can go and seek the talent that we need, the diverse talent. So, doctors and these professions and lawyers and teachers, as well as, other industries. I think, they need to see the representation, and they need to see Black professionals in Danville that stay. I think that will help build the culture. I also think, investment in Black businesses, and if there were a fund to help, new entrepreneurs, because, when I think of a new Black Danville, I think of, Danville will always be home to me. So I think of family. So I think of a familial place. Especially and I was pulling up the stats on Danville, there are, in the 2010 census, there were like 16,000 people, 10% Black. So that's less than 2,000 Black folk, right? So I think of you know, a business or a restaurant, like places where Black people can gather, feel safe. And with though investment in Black businesses, I also think of like a business coach, like they would get a business coach, because I think a lot of time happens is they have the vision and it just, the longevity just isn't there in whatever industry that they decide to go in. So if they have that support to be long-standing. And then I also think of, you know, if money was no object, like the Black folks would have money and we can invest in, you know, homes and communities and just kind of build up Black Danville.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I agree that there needs to be a mentoring structure. As folks have said, that we need to see, or younger people need to see Black people in certain positions, and that they're not used to seeing in Danville, and also the recruiting of Black people. There's a lot of very talented Black folks, especially on this call, who have left Danville and have no immediate plans to return. So we're not keeping or retaining that Black, you know, that level of Black quality within our community, and that's a problem. But also Danville has to have Black recreation. There have to be places to go. There have to be events for Black people. One of the things that, and I forget her name, that she was talking about, like, it's really hard to form those connections in Danville when you move here, and it is really hard to do that because there aren't those places to go, there aren't those events. So Danville has to be very aware of, we need to have more events, we need to have that are specifically directed at African Americans, at Black people, so that we have safe places and spaces to gather and be that community. And we used to have that decades ago, because there used to be Black businesses and there used to be Black places, but that has left. And so that sort of recreation has to be key if we're going to have Black Danville and a Black community.
So what would y'all want these Black spaces to be? You want to, I know there's lots of them, but just, I'm trying to be fun here. Your dream space, would it be a club? Would it be a community center? Would it be a pool? Would it be, I don't know.
I take a club, a coffee shop, somewhere to shop, like a boutique, you know, with like distinct, you know, African American things. Let's see, what else I like? Shoes, a little shoe boutique, somewhere good to eat. Like, I just imagine walking, because Main Street to me is quintessential Danville. Like, you know, they got the flower baskets hanging, they got the lights at Christmas. So to me, that's quintessential Danville. But what I want to do is be able to walk up Main Street and see some of us there. So that's what my dream is. Even if it's a club on one corner, you know, on the weekends, or, you know, if I walk by the coffee shop that's owned by my Black sister or brother, I can just stop in, hey, and I could see Lana or Janna who came home, or Courtney, or Dr. Abrams, you know, because that's just a place where we feel safe and we can congregate. So that's, like I said, one day when I walk down Main Street, that's what I want to feel.
Thank you. Everybody else good with that view of downtown Main Street? Maybe a museum?
Oh, like yes.
I like the idea of a cultural center where I think it could be all-encompassing. They could bring in plays or put on plays, like a community theater where you do like Lorraine Hansberry and August Wilson and, you know, The Wiz and different things. So I think some of that is missing. Like, I don't know if when I was young, they had what's called Pioneer Playhouse or something like that. I don't know if that's still around or not, but it'd be cool to have like those aspects of the culture, like a coffee house. And I know like here in Atlanta, sometimes you might have a coffee house or a restaurant, and in the nighttime they do poetry, or, you know, have other things that you can enjoy and experience. So I think that would be cool to be able to have like an art gallery where you could actually buy African-American art or things, or jewelry created by African-American artisans. So I think there's a lot that you could do in under the auspices of like kind of like a community center or cultural center or something of that nature.
Thank you. Yes, Kiana?
I'm just gonna say, like, listening to everybody, I agree, like, just by the way, representation is really important. But also, I think like in some ways there are things that Danville could do with what they've already got that just need to think more creatively about how to be more inclusive. So like I said, the Westfield Community Theater, they could easily do a play where the play is focused on Black life for a change. Or I was really, really impressed by the art center here on Main Street when I went inside, and like it's really nice. It's a really nice place, and they could have exhibits that focus on Black life and Black life in the diaspora. Or they could also have coffee shops or places, like if there are sports bars or places where people go to listen to music or whatever, they could have like nights where they play soul music or R&B or Caribbean music or Latinx music or something. Like people just need to get a little bit more creative. I don't know if we'll be able to have spaces, like Black-owned spaces, or I don't know how realistic. I think anything is possible, but I just think there's potential for what's already here as well. So, yeah.
And thank you, Toya. She has to leave. And actually, it's time for us to wrap up. Before I wrap completely up, I wanted to give Nikki Kincaid a chance to say something, if she would like to.
Hi, I'm Nikki Kincaid. I'm the director at the Arts Center, and I invite each of you to come in and enjoy what we have with the mask on. That we appreciate greatly listening and hearing what you have to say. And we hope that this show and this exhibit will be a great opportunity for the community to it's like to be Black in Danville. So your input is greatly appreciated, and thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank the artists for your participation, and I look forward to seeing what you create. We all look forward to seeing what you create. And I want to really, really, truly thank all of the participants for getting invested in this and showing up tonight, doing this awkward Zoom thing, and telling your truths and discussing what it is what your experiences of Blackness in Danville and your dreams for Blackness in Danville and your experiences where you are. And we really, really appreciate your time and your effort and your continued commitment to Danville, even from afar, right here or in Louisville. So thank you all so much. And if there is no questions or anything, we'll call it a night.
Thank you.